And some were speaking about the temple, how it was adorned with beautiful stones and gifts dedicated to God. He said, "As for these things that you see, the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." They asked him, "Teacher, when will this be, and what will it be the sign that is about to take place?" And he said, "Beware that you are not led astray. For many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and the time is near. Do not go after them. When you hear of wars and insurrections, do not be terrified. For these things must first take place, but in the end will not follow immediately." Then he said to them, "Nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and in various places famines and plagues. And there will be dreadful portents and great signs from heaven. But before all this occurs, they will arrest you and persecute you, and they will hand you over to the synagogues and prisons. And you will be brought before the kings and governors because of my name. This will give you an opportunity to testify. So make up your minds not to be prepared your defense in advance, for I will give you words and wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to withstand or contradict. You will be betrayed even by parents and brothers, by relatives and friends, and they will put some of you to death. But you will be hated by all because of my name. But not a hair of your head will perish. By your endurance, you will gain your souls." The word of the Lord. Praise be to the Lord.
I thought before Suzy speaks, it's nice to know a little something about her. Oh wow, am I on now? She was born and grew up in Texas, and she moved to Michigan as a young woman, where her husband went to grad school, and she taught English. After remarrying, she moved to California for grad school, UCLA. And after that, moved to Shorewood, where her husband's job took him. He's a sociology teacher at Marquette. And she taught English at Carroll College for several years. And they raised 2 daughters. The family were members of Kenwood United Methodist Church for many years. About 10 years before she retired, she worked at the Shorewood schools as a teacher's aide in special ed. She likes bird watching. She enjoys music, sports, reading, outdoor adventures. Like what?
It's cross-country skiing and hiking.
Cross-country skiing and hiking. And canoeing. Okay. And most recently, she's been spending a lot of time with a 5-month-old grandson. So that's really neat. Since retiring, she's devoted more and more time to social justice activism, and we'll probably hear a little bit about that. She's a marvelous UMW member, and we are delighted to have her talk to us today. Suzy, take the floor.
Thank you. I appreciate being invited here to speak. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable, O God. I grew up in a Methodist church, later United Methodist, and after the usual childhood involvement, I became precociously active. I sang in the adult choir and taught Sunday school before I was 20. But it never occurred to me to be active in the WSCS, which was one of the predecessor organizations of the United Methodist Women. And I don't even remember the birth of the United Methodist Women. Later, when I moved away and belonged to other churches as an adult, UMW wasn't on my radar. Why was that? In part, I'm sure I turned away because as a budding feminist of the late 60s and early 70s, such women's groups were associated in my mind with things like garden clubs, bridge groups, coffee clutches, all the kinds of roles young women I knew were trying to distance themselves from. It's likely I only knew of the United Methodist Women vaguely. I probably relegated them to the church kitchen in my mind, sort of bake sales, ice cream socials, funeral dinners, and baby showers. It wasn't until I came to Kenwood UMC in Milwaukee, when I was in my mid-30s, that I was introduced to the heart of UMW, mission in its best sense. It is, after all, the first line of our purpose. United Methodist Women are organized for mission. Kenwood hosted a day apart, the district's midwinter overview of the previous year's School of Mission subjects, and I was amazed at the diversity and passion and quality of information. In the next 2 years, I attended first a drive-in day at School of Mission, and then the full week-long summer course. I was blown away by the wealth of information, absolutely current and absolutely empowering. These programs, texts, and speakers put hands, feet, and heart onto the gospel. I could see Christ's words living as I learned about my sisters and brothers in the Philippines and explored the complicated world of the gospel and the media. Over the years, the National UMW has produced incredibly timely studies, bringing awareness and pointing toward action on issues such as climate justice, income inequality, and immigration. Although its name has changed to Mission U, and this year its format has changed to shorter, more events, the event still provides the backbone for our social justice labors. And men can go to these too. So I embraced the powerful work of the UMW. I think, as I embraced it, I think I operated with the vague, admittedly self-referential sense that somehow, in the mid-1980s or so, the United Methodist Women suddenly became relevant, as if the blossoming of the women's movement within our culture had enabled the organization to move from a quaint ladies group to a strong force for social justice. Sorry, I've got some pages out of order here. Some revisions last night. For Christ's work in the world. So I thought that, everything had sort of changed with United. Boy, was I wrong. Oh, I knew that the founders of the organization 150 years ago, that little band of 8 women, had bravely called 2 women missionaries to work with women and children in India. But it wasn't really until I went to Assembly last year, and then to Mission U this summer, where I took the course Women United for Change, 150 Years in Mission. And here's the book. Here's the 8 ladies from 150 years ago. That it sunk in for me not only how truly radical this action of the founders was, but how the entire 150 years since 1869 had been strewn with women who refused to accept a harmful status quo, who persisted in the face of male dismissiveness and domination, who broke down barriers of discrimination and inequality, who stepped out of conventional roles to bring God's love to the dispossessed. Our foremothers embody the final verse in our gospel reading today, especially in the Message translation, as the Message translation presents it. Stay with it. That's what's required, it says in the Message. Stay with it to the end. You won't be sorry. Women in our predecessor organizations have been at the forefront of important social movements, such as women's suffrage, anti-lynching, racial equality, racial equity, quality education, improvement of labor conditions, mistreatment of immigrants and refugees. As Ellen Blue, the author of Women United for Change, says, although we have all heard that without knowledge of the past, we keep making the same mistakes, Repeating errors is by no means the most serious loss associated with the ignorance of our heritage. On the contrary, the biggest loss is the opportunity to learn from the successes we've forgotten. In doing this brave, spirit-led work, these determined women often had to overcome male prejudice and obstruction. For example, when the office of deaconess was first approved in 1909, one male delegate said, "I'm opposed to establishing a hennery in the church, hatching out female preachers." While another argued, "There is no school of training under heaven that is comparable to the school of suffering, in which a good woman may learn to do the duty that belongs to Christian women." Of course, these women who stood up in the face of such opposition had the same powerful examples that we do today, many of the biblical women. Think for a moment about the woman in Mark's Gospel who anoints Jesus. In Mark's story, she is unnamed, and Jesus is only days away from Calvary. We often focus on the debate in this story over the use of the expensive ointment. But even more controversial, even more startling, is the unnamed woman's very presence at this gathering. She comes, apparently unaccompanied and uninvited, and she boldly takes charge of the moment to anoint Jesus. She dares dramatically to tend to the deepest needs of the Savior, even though doing so draws down the wrath of the men in the room. Like so many women in Jesus' life, she sees clearly who her Lord is and participates eagerly in this ministry. And how does Jesus respond? He resoundingly affirms her faith, saying, "Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed to the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." As Janet Wolfe, the author of the Spiritual Growth Study for this year's Mission U, notes, this affirmation is all the more astounding as it is the only time that Jesus insists a particular event must be included in the telling of the gospel. Wherever this good news is proclaimed, Jesus said, this woman's tender witness and radical discipleship will be remembered. And there are several other women who also act boldly in Jesus' life. The hemorrhaging woman who touches his gown, the Mother Mary who prods him at Cana, the Syrophoenician woman who pleads for help for her daughter and in so doing expands Jesus' vision of his ministry, Joanna and Susanna who use their considerable means to provide for Jesus' traveling ministries, and finally, the women at the cross and at the tomb. Each woman stood firmly on her belief and acted with faith and commitment. I haven't even included here the courageous Old Testament women, such as Ruth, Rahab, and Esther. And we also know of the valiant women of the early church, such as Dorcas and Lydia. Just so, United Methodist women such as Belle Bennett, Mary McLeod Bethune, Frances Willard, Thelma Stevens, and Teresa Hoover stepped out to offer radical hospitality and put flesh on the faith. A Spirit faculty member once described Methodist deaconesses as loving troublemakers, a phrase that should accurately apply to all of us. The woman who coined the phrase did not mean that deaconesses love making trouble. As Ellen Blue says, the woman meant that deaconesses made trouble because they loved. They loved others enough to raise their voices and speak for those whom Jesus would have called the least of these. Blue continues, there is a spiritual wade in the water that promises God's going to trouble the water. It's based on John 5:4, a reference to an angel who would periodically trouble the waters of the pool of Bethsaida, so that the first person who stepped into them afterward would be healed. Blue continues stating that Jesus demonstrates that we don't have to be the first to be healed. We whose history have been overlooked can also be healed and be healers of ourselves, our church, and our world. We too can trouble the water and bring forth change, the kind of change the sisters brought before us, and the kind of change that is needed today. End quote. And those changes are perhaps inspired by the vision we heard earlier in the reading from Isaiah. That's how we get there. I would go so far as to argue that United Methodist women represent what is very best about the United Methodist Church. our organization has taken deeply to heart John Wesley's ideals. He declared in The Character of a Methodist that true Methodists were distinguished not by what they believed, but by what they did and how they practiced their faith. As one deaconess suggests, while church men theorized their way towards the social gospel, church women took practical action. Yet I would argue further that in many cases, United Methodist Women have kept their light under a bushel. Not enough of us, let alone others in the church or beyond our doors, know about our vibrant, crucial work. A couple of months ago, there was a nationwide climate strike, and I participated in a Milwaukee event. It was incredibly inspiring to see the little children and the youths whose lives are truly in the balance, exhorting their elders to serious action. You may well have heard about or even participated in a similar event. But did you know that United Methodist Women officially supported and expressed solidarity for this youth-led movement? Elizabeth Chun-Kai Lee, Executive for Economic and Environmental Justice and Criminal Justice League, Christian Social Action for United Methodist Women, it's a very long title, said, "My responsibility as a mother, a woman of faith, and an advocate for climate justice is to take action that will set future generations up for success. As United Methodists, we live out our commitment to faith when we work to ensure current and future generations have a chance to live in safe communities." She continues, "If we aren't fighting for just energy for all and pushing for development of zero-emission school buses and public transportation and utilities that provide 100% clean, renewable energy that are just and equitable, we aren't creating sustainable communities for the future." How many in your church are aware that Just Energy for All is one of 4 official UMW social campaigns for the quadrennium? A second campaign, Interrupting the School to Prison Pipeline, has a downloadable Bible study on the UMW website, which units and adult ed groups are encouraged to use. The other 2 emphases, A Living Wage for All and End Maternal Mortality, are the subject of direct action, webinars, and other programs and appeals. And here's the poster that has all 4 of these. It's a poster from United Methodist Women Social Action. If you read Response Magazine, the official UMW publication subtitled Women in Mission, you may be familiar with these and other issues. And I apologize if I've overstated the general lack of knowledge about the work of the UMW. But I know that even within my own faith groups and local unit, our awareness of all this engagement is fuzzy at best. So I implore you to find out more about both the work and the heritage of the United Methodist Women. Go to the website, read Response Magazine. Better yet, participate in the wonderfully rich reading program of UMW. My spiritual life has been profoundly empowered by the work suggested each year on our list, as well as by Mission U text. And everything I've mentioned so far is available to everyone, and it doesn't matter what your ability or disability level is, you can do all those things. But further, even more importantly, if you can, attend annual gatherings, Mission U, or the once in 4 years assembly, an event attended by women from all over the world that is truly transformational. Talk to anyone who's attended and they will agree. As United Methodist Women move into our next 150 years, it is crucial that we reclaim our identity as more than a rummage and bake sale group. The best news is that there's no prerequisite for being a United Methodist woman, aside from being either a woman or a pastor or both. Anyone who wants to join the group and who has a passion for mission is welcome and desired in the group. That's it. You don't have to be a member of any church or baptized or anything. Indeed, I urge all women prayerfully to consider affiliation with UMW, whether you ever attend a meeting or not. The mission, the work, remains so vital that we need all hands on deck. Are you ready to trouble the waters with love and wade in? I hope so. Amen.
Let's see if I can do this. I can't even find the little button. Jeff, am I on? Yes. How about the officers of UMW who are here come forward? And maybe we can usher Kathy. Where are you? She's behind a big guy. Could you come forward? It's a wonderful opportunity that we have each year, if we care to honor a member of our congregation who has done exceptional things. And I know a lot of you are there who have been past recipients, but this, 150 years, I just think this is really special that we get to honor Kathy Walter, who has been selfless in her mission work for our food pantry. She's loyal, she's there, she's consistent, she's just a rock. And I know she's done other things that could be called mission also in her activities for the Lakeland School. And anyway, she's a remarkable Methodist woman, and it is our pleasure to honor you with a little pin. It's something that's easily lost. and a certificate that says you are being honored